Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Gyle here, and welcome back to the Forged Alliance Forever promotional series. And oh my goodness, it feels like a long time since I got to say that. I've had just about every single IT nightmare issue that anybody has ever been subjected to in the history of computing. And suffice to say, it ended up in me reformatting. I think the reason why consoles are destroying video games for everybody is because PCs are just too irritatingly complex. But anyway, there we are. I ended up reformatting my computer, backed up most of it, but lost a few things that you never invariably lose when you do these things. One of which, of course, is the banner at the bottom of the screen, so I'll have to find that again from somewhere. There will be a period of normalization, guys, while I try and get the levels right. So if something seems a little bit off in these earlier, or these next couple of casts, do forgive me. I'm trying to get it back to where we were before. Lots of things have been going on this last week while I've been away. Lots of decent games played. Got a bit of a backlog that I get to bring you, which is all very nice. Lots of interesting discussions about air balance on the forums and whatnot. But it'll be a little while before I rank up into team games. I need to get Photoshop and things reinstalled for overlays and all that kind of business, but I will be back on an even keel from now on, guys. You'll be pleased to hear. Anyway, today's game, I've got a ladder match I'm going to bring you today, and it's going to take place on Roanoke's Abyss. So let's go over to the game zone and see how these guys are going to get on. Of course, we're all insanely familiar with Roanoke's Abyss. We're all pretty familiar as well with our two heroes today. Let's take a look at them. Up here at the 12 o'clock position in the red corner, our good, quintessentially attractive German friend Zock. And he's continuing his little bit of Seraphim run. He's been all about the Seraphim of late. I'm wondering if this is a trend that's going to continue, if he's abandoned Cybran for good, or it's just a temporary thing. Certainly that will hold him in good stead, of course, for this particular map, Roanoke's Abyss, heavily favouring water play, as you would expect. So Seraphim, an excellent pick for this map. Not, of course, that didn't know necessarily that they were going to be playing Roanoke's Abyss when they started today's game, of course, because this is a ladder match. Anyway, so that's our red player, and he's facing off against our blue contender down here in the 6 o'clock position. It's Adjuton, and I'd like to say he's very attractive as well. I'm sure he is. Couldn't tell you what country he's from, though. Maybe answers on a postcard, or better yet, in the comment section below if you know where he's from. And Adjuton, if you're watching, why don't you tell us? Anyway, he's going Aeon, and he opened first land, going second air. Did we even discuss what Zock opened? I mean, we did. Anyway, he went first land, second air as well. So both of these guys going pretty much the same direction on that, as you would expect. The early engineers are out. You never see basically any kind of super early aggression on Roanoke's. The map is just too prohibitively large. The geography kind of prohibits, of course, any kind of lab play, so you don't see anything like that working in the early stages. Nothing but engineers going out to their initial extended mechs targets there, and there on those 4 surrounding islands. And of course, not long after, you expect to see some transports. But anyway, both these guys getting some scout planes out, going looking for targets, and Adjuton already getting an interceptor out as well, undoubtedly looking for the transport that's likely to be taking off as we speak. There it is. Adjuton homes in on it. It's the first few volleys away. Nothing on the ground as yet. It's going to be able to shoot down that Inti, but that could be something go some way to hampering things. A static D appears on the ground for Zock, and he manages to save the light transport. 116 hit points left on that puppy. Are there any more Intis incoming? There is another one over here to the left, coming in from Adjuton. Meanwhile, down at the bottom, we have got a T1 bomber and a scout plane that's looking for expanding NGs. This one down here looks like he might not reach his next birthday. And the next Inti comes in. Surely will be able to shoot down that transport, and indeed he does. Immediately that next bomber that was queued up there for Zock in that air factory gets cancelled. Zock has to restart another transport, get those expanding NGs out to the sidelines. But anyway, a little bit of success here for this bomber, just as an Inti from Adjuton hones in on it, manages to pick up that engineer kill. That engineer at least managed to get the big rock down there, so did some decent work there before its demise. We do have a mechs and a radar But that little engineer there from Zock, unable to establish a ground factory, sorry, thanks to this circling bomber there from Adjuton. It's now going to go after the radar. Zock making a move with his ACU, meanwhile, onto that island. Adjuton has done the same down here to the most westerly island next to him, the southwesterly island. He's immediately going to queue up some a land factory and some mexes with his ACU once he's finished recycling all of that local flora and fauna. Circling bomber up here for Adjuton. He's to skirt around these ISILs, these mobile anti-air units for Seraphim there from Zock. Not going to manage that. He's not going to get another pass out of that one. Nice little bit of defense there from Zock. So both these guys following pretty much the same kind of build orders and strats so far. Nice airdrop there from Zock. 5 units of build capacity airlifted onto that island. That will help him with expansion. Zock already has the land factory well underway. Meanwhile, down here, Adjuton completes his land factory and gets straight on to building some engineers with that. Meanwhile, main base, Adjuton, 5 total naval factories queued up, 2 already constructed, as opposed to Zock that has gone for just the 1 for the moment. No more queued up as yet, but we know of course he won't be sticking with that, going straight for frigates, I believe. Looks like a frigate that he's constructing that. Army of frigates to do with as he will. Off that rolls. And is it given any early orders? Not by the looks of things. He's going to stack for the moment. Transport makes its way over to one of the side islands up here at the northwestern edge of the map. This could be a potential Zooey drop that we're working up to here from Zock. You can see him spitting out those light artilleries. He's got the transport waiting there. Perhaps some move down here to Adjuton's western island. Can bump that up to +2 as we just move forward through these early stages. Adjuton looking pretty good on eco, 74 to 65. Definitely doing a little better in the first kind of opening 10 minutes of this, certainly on eco at any rate. And then of course, the minute I say it, the numbers change and Zock moves ahead. I think that might have been a momentary power outage from Adjuton. Yeah, there it is. See, he's right on the breadline there, needs to work on getting that power stabilized. Zock continuing to build naval factories now with his ACU down here in his eastern island. Has also queued up quite a few back at his home base as well. Another 4 in front of that main starting island. Meanwhile, Adjuton has those earlier queued up factories online, all 5 of them in place, and he's predominantly working on subs for the moment. See, he's stacking up those sylphs. Early frigate out from Zock, looking down to come down here and harass some of these mexes. Manages to pick off 1. Needs to be careful, doesn't want to lose that frigate to ACU fire, which he manages to avoid. Pulls it out just in time. 500 HP left on that puppy. But those 3 sylphs that rolled off the conveyor belts for Adjuton just a minute ago, heading directly north to see if they can cause some trouble. They're not going to get a deny on here. Far too many naval yards in place, and also a whole bunch of T1 torpedo launchers as well there for Zock. Now, I've just realized the setting of strategic icons disappearing when we zoom in is on, which is kind of annoying. I'll try and remember to get that sorted out for later. Would rather not have to pull up the menu to do it now. But look at this Zooey drop from Zock heading down the western edge of the map. He's keeping Adjuton busy with this 1 frigate at the moment, circling around Adjuton's western island. That succumbs to self-submarine fire. And it looks like this little drop is coming right the way around. Hold the shift key, we can see those orders. And he's dropping them off, so he's doing a little cheeky 1 Zooey per island truffle shuffle. He's going to be able to threaten these mexes at the back simultaneously and put some pressure on the main base as well, assuming this manages to make its destination. More frigates biting the dust there for Zock as Adjuton brings his subs into play. He's got quite a merry band of submarines in play there now. And those Zuis move in. It's going to be a couple of mexes down. But Adjuton can certainly afford to lose the odd one. He's way ahead in mass, 125 to 113. That might change after this T2 Mex bites the dust. This is a very nice little drop from Zock. But suddenly Spectres turn up, so Adjuton making the transition to T2 Air. Going to be able to tidy those up nicely. Still needs to kill that one Zui over there in the west, but otherwise the threat from that little drop has been eliminated. Still, definitely worth going for there from Zock. T2 sonar buoy there destroyed by Adjuton and this little band of Auroras, which is bearing down on a T1 PD. Down that goes. Even the wall sections don't manage to save it, and so does the mechs on that island. It's got a bomber out to deal with that beautiful bomb right in the middle, taking out 4 units there. Our next bomber probably be able to finish them off altogether. 5 units. That is some time efficient or cost efficient play there from Zock with those 2 bombers. Nice to see. But that's quite a hearty looking band of naval units from Zock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subs in play there for Adjuton. But I'd say just as many subs there from Zock, and also quite a few frigates as well, and some Zuis that have snuck behind the line as well on the eastern island there for Zock. And after yet more mexes, Adjuton and Zock almost on complete level pegging there, 153 to 152 mass, jostling and fluctuating a little bit. Nothing that's going to give any one player an advantage at the moment. And in come the Spectres, taking an inordinate amount of anti-aircraft fire from the frigates, but of course not a lot of damage associated with those frigates. They're ignoring them for the moment and going instead after the Zuis that could potentially threaten the base itself on this island. And now we've got an Exodus on the field, so Adjuton making the transition to T2 Navy there, but another little run by at the back by the Zuis. Zock threatening the rear mexes, another Spectre out again to deal with it, and it's quite interesting that Adjuton is going for a decent tech airplay. You would expect him to do so, of course, having the advantage in the air. Seraphim ultimately going to have the advantage in the sea once it reaches the T3 phase, and Zock starts spewing out those sub-hunters. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Adjuton really wants to capitalize on his air advantage, that is, of course, being Aeon. Definitely wise to play to your racial strengths, but Zui's coming in now from Zock, going after the mexes. And loath as I am to do this, there's a decent break in play here. I just have to pause things up and place strategic icons back on if I can. Interface surely. Display. Where are you? Where are you? I must find you. Sure, just always render strategic icons. There we go. There we go. Always render strategic icons. Bazinga, play, zoom in. There they are. Much better. A whole bunch of you just cried out, no, I prefer it the other way. Well, tough. This is a finely well-oiled machine. I think you know that's not the case at all. Meanwhile, Spectres incoming from Adjuton, northeastern island, coupled with an Exodus in this little band of Navy from Adjuton, going after all of the resourcing option and some of the build capacity on this northeastern island for Zock. Zock skirts around the island with a huge number of frigates, a couple of destroyers thrown in there for good measure as well. Turns up with his own interceptors to combat what Inties and Swiftwind's Adjuton has in the area, but then he bugs out, and Zock needs to pay a little bit of attention here. He's got inferior quantities of forces caught behind his own interceptors, and he's losing all of them. That is a nice pickup there from Adjuton, killing an awful lot of Zock's Inties. What's left chasing these Spectres over here, but are going to get murdered by a bunch of Swiftwinds, hatching a little bit of an ambush there. So nice passage of airplay there for Adjuton, but Zock has managed to fend off this fleet with what is quite a chunky looking fleet of his own. Tons and tons of frigates. Adjuton comes in to thin some of them out if he can. Also a bunch of T2 floating tanks, which could make life difficult there for Adjuton. He's not going to get or want to get too embroiled or bogged down in an engagement on that island. He's going to have to stay mobile. He's got quite a lot of floating units himself, including blazes, so he's also taking advantage of the floaty, naughty that's going to be going on throughout this game, of course. Aeon versus Seraphon. But these Spectres growing in number now for Adjuton. Swiftwinds thinning out the air for Zock, keeping them safe, but it's a bad place to park as a cruiser has just turned up, and suddenly Spectres looking slightly impotent in that area of the map. This is, of course, the great danger about air versus sea. It's not an easy thing to deal with if you're the air player. And shuffling right now with what's left of his Spectre force. Adjuton still hunting for a kill, but immediately runs into a bunch of Ioshiva's floating Seraphim flak and loses the rest of those Spectres. So what looked like a nice passage of play there from Adjuton with those gunships suddenly muted by a cruiser and a handful of floating flak. Could have got in around the sides, hit some of the mexes maybe on this island, coming around the back, caused some problems up here. Zock actually with a transport laden with Zoos ready to go, waiting for an opportunity. Adjuton still needing to recolonize these small side islands down here. Engineer on the way to do just that. Small band of scout planes coming across some Spectres down there in the bottom corner. Both these guys just kind of posturing now, building up their naval forces. Zock looking like he wants to try his hands at harassing this eastern island for Adjuton. 2 T2 mexes out of commission already. A third one round here could be put under pressure very easily. His attention will undoubtedly now be focused on horde of Aeon units now intermingling and intersecting with his own ships. That's quite a lot of naval units from both players, both incorporating some destroyers here. It's a decent number of blazes though as well, which could be enough to tip the balance in favor of Adjuton. Adjuton's going to be wanting to go after the destroyers, which Zock is wisely keeping at the back of the pack, using those frigates as the meek shields. Of course, you want to be doing. I think all of the naval units pretty much taken out now for Adjuton, but those Auroras and Blazes still enough to send Zock packing. So Adjuton holds on to his territory there at great but probably equal cost. Zooey's incoming meanwhile from Zock over in the west. And also these band of, what do they call it? Yenzin, floating T2 hover tanks for Seraphim. And Ioshiva's also moving down there. But Zooey's not going to get any traction on this island at all. Adjuton paying good attention to the intel, moves on those Zooeys and pops them aside, all except that one. Pulled out a little bit too early there. And that other little floating force there from Zock is also going to back up. Managed to pop one of the mexes in the meantime though. But Adjuton is ahead. Not by a huge margin, but nonetheless ahead. It seems to be jostling between somewhere between 20 and 30 mass differential between these two in favor of Adjuton. And of course I don't have Gaz UI installed. Gotta reappropriate that, so I can't tell you how these guys are doing on the reclaim side of things. I'd imagine it was pretty even if I had to guess. Adjuton busy building up on his power, which he needs to do. He's a little bit behind on power. He'll probably be even though once this goes online. There he goes. He jumps to 1k in front. But hello, we've now reached the battleship phase of the naval battle. 2 Omens already on the pitch for Adjuton. One Seraphim T3 battleship joins the fray for Zock. And another Omen inbound as well. So Adjuton favouring heavy Omen play. Probably wants to use ground fire ultimately to see off the sub-hunters that he's going to be expecting. And there is one, as we say it, coming in from Zock now. Zock with his 1 T3 factory seems to be alternating between battleship production and sub-hunter. In fact, there's another 2 already at the front line. Let's keep an eye, see how good Adjuton is with the ground fire. So we get the first initial exchanges now between these battleships. Adjuton with 3 Exoduses in tow. One of them biting the dust there as he comes into contact with those Seraphim destroyers. And a wave of Inties join the fray from Zock. Just running cover, but ASF's on the field and in decent number for Adjuton. So transition to T3 air complete for him. And is that Solace? That is Solace. So we have T3 torpedo bombers. And if you can get some passes over some of these sub-hunters, be in a pretty good position here. If you can knock those out of commission. He's got a lot of battleships. Why do I even bother, says Adjuton. You certainly are winning by quite a margin. 60 to 70 mass differential between these two in favor of Adjuton, and that just shows the awareness of Zock. It's the only kind of the awareness you get after several thousand games of SOPCOM, to instinctively know what your opponent's at mass-wise. Of course, doesn't have the benefit of all of this information that we have, but he was well aware that Adjutan's ahead. And if you'd like to ask yourselves if you would have that level of alertness to look at what your opponent's got and work out that you're behind in eco on a map this large. And yes, he's losing these solaces. nearly gets another sub-hunter, but remember, Solace, roughly half the cost of mass of a sub-hunter, so you can afford to lose them 2-1 and still be on par. Destroyers inbound though from Zock at the western edge of the map, and Adjuton doesn't have a great deal on the field up here. He's redirected a couple of torpedo bombers up this way. They really do dish out so much damage. Could do with a couple more. I think Zock is gonna have to think about, maybe consider putting a few more cruisers in the mix to deal with all of this air power that Adjuton's going to be throwing at him in this one. The Exodus finally show up, but Zock split into two bands over here in the west. This little band could come around left-hand edge of this island. Adjuton recognizes the danger and skews left with these land units. A lot of asylums and a lot of ascendants as well. Do with a lot more blazes in that mix. But Solace's turn up just in the nick of time, dropping all their torpedoes onto land. The next pass should cause some damage. However, meanwhile, look at this. Back and forth with the sub-hunters for Zock, pummeling and peppering those omens with about as many torpedoes as they can fit in their tubes. One omen going to go down there. That Exodus soon to join him. Adjuton needs to be real careful here. Those Solaces been busy over in the west. Needs to buy himself some time to get them back over here. Of course, those sub-hunters, excellent anti-air as well by raising them. And there he goes. Huge muzzle velocity on those puppies. Just such a powerful all-round unit. You can see quite a few cruisers in the back there, providing excellent anti-air coverage for Zock, who is still behind on mass, but not by a huge amount now. 10 to 20 mass differential, so he's reined it in a little bit. It's helped that he's knocked down 3 of these T2 mexes in the west for Adjuton. But these sub-hunters going to be the main issue for our Blue Aeon player now. Needs to work a little bit on his ground fire, I think, with these battleships. Quite a few omens over here in the west as well. Should think perhaps about maybe a counterattack. He is pushing up with a band units, but it's that same band of units which is heavy on the shielding and anti-air, but doesn't actually have a great deal of firepower. And he's leading with 3 Exodus class at the front, which is nice. I just think if even 50% of the ascendants in here were blazes, how much more damage he could inflict up here. I think he's going to struggle to write this base off for Zock. Zock's already got some T2 PD in place and some T1s. He does turn up as well with 1 sub-hunter. They're going to be chasing down the destroyers. Not going to be able to do anything about the floaty stuff. Going to go to split screen here to keep an eye on the different fronts. Some sub-hunters in the middle, raised as well, going after those Solaces, but also, of course, taking torpedo fire at the same time. Large engagement happening east of that as the main 2 fleets begin to tangle with one another. Zock hastily throwing T2 PD up as quickly as can, and T1. Adjuton's going to want to knock out that build capacity as quickly as possible. Finishes off the last of the T2 PD. Could really do with going after those engineers. Looking a little bit better over in the east, meanwhile. Solaces have dealt with those sub-hunters. Nice little bit of passenger play here from Adjuton, once again pulling away in mass. 370 plays 3, 4, 5. But just as I thought, not quite enough to kill off this island. Does manage to take down that land factory. There's still a decent amount of build capacity down here, however. Immediately can queue up a new one. And sub-hunters in tow going after that last Exodus and the last 2 Sylphs. And no blazes left in that pile either, so not bad. We've got 4, 5, 6, 7 mexes out of commission on that island for Zock. But look at this, Zock has joined the air game with a vengeance, with a pretty significant bunch of ASFs. Let's take a look at how many he's got there. 41 ASFs on the field for Zock, compared to, if I can click on the right thing, 40 from Adjuton. So it's pretty much even in the ASF game, and if Adjuton wants to take advantage of Aeon air power, he's going to need to gain some kind of significant advantage on ASF count. We have now got a torrent on the field. Brutal units. And if he can get this navy in here somewhere, he can threaten this island, certainly threaten these over here without any difficulty. But a cheeky little maneuver around here from Zock with a battleship. He's got that right around the edge of Adjuton's base. And we've got a strategic missile submarine. What? Just as I say it, where has that come from? It's come from the battleship down here. I was just about to say that strategic missile submarine has a nuke in the clip. Where is the nuke going? Does he have nuke defense? No, he doesn't. Boom! And that once great advantage for Adjuton dissolves in a haze of, damn, I should have built a strategic nuke defense. And not only that, that battleship's still alive down here for Zock. There is the missile I was going to be talking about from that strategic missile submarine. If he can land it on top of the sub-hunters, which is what he's going for, he places it behind. Zock anticipates that with a beautiful split, literally right where he expected that missile to be going, and takes virtually no casualties. That is a stunning turn of events in favor of Zock. And Adjuton has now got to climb a pretty significant mountain to get back on top. In this one you can see it's 405 mass to 321 in favor of Zock now. There's a huge nuclear shaped hole in Adjuton's base. You can see he's hastily rebuilding, but that's going to be a tough ask. Lots of spy planes out everywhere for Zock. Adjuton now probably low on intel. Did he have an Omni or T2? That's what he was relying on. Whatever he had intel-wise was on his main island. You can see he can't even spot those spy planes at all now, lingering around his main base. Meanwhile, the naval fight continues, and it's going from bad to worse for Adjuton. He is indeed trying to ground fire the sub-hunters. A lot of them are quite heavily damaged. 700 HP there, 150 there, 1150 there. But some nice micro from Zock. And those omens have been torn a new one. And that is a real shame for Adjuton. It is no small accomplishment to lead Zock in a game of SOCCOM for 40 minutes, which is effectively what he was doing, sort of finding himself out-ecoed there. But a very nice and tidy sea-based nuclear missile put an end to all that, coupled with decent sub-hunter play. Ton of cruisers there, anticipating heavy Solace bombardment on those sub-hunters for Zock, which never really materialized. It wouldn't have mattered anyway. Zock keeping up with the ASF count nicely. Adjuton would not have been able to capitalize to any great or significant level. what's left of that land-based hover platoon. Makes its way onto northeastern Ireland for Zock, going after the T2 mexes. Not going to break the bank at all. There's quite a hardy amount of omens still on the field. You can see he's still going for the ground fire. Nice collective splash there from Adjuton. You can really see what a large number of battleships, well aimed, can do to densely packed hordes of sub-hunters. Everyone complains about how OP the sub-hunters. No doubt they are a phenomenally or exceptionally good unit, but a decent SOPCOM player can find ways around that with a little bit of predictive targeting. Essentially everyone who grew up in the 80s played Space Invaders. Shoot where I was going to be. Is, of course, Adjuton's going to want to be focusing on these battleships of Zock's. He's got to stay on the move as well because of all of this cruiser fire. But look at the massive ASF battle going off around Adjuton's main base, and strap bombers as well. And he's not going to be able to get back on top of this one. Adjuton's got his ACU in the water down here. And look at it, 397 to -2 mass, no power whatsoever, and no real prospect of getting back into this one. That Eastern Island is completely destroyed. And now those T3 mexes under fire. And of course, while we've scrolled away, those omens have been sunk, and sunk badly. There's a place to get your engineers. You see Adjuton sitting up there with his own, but he hasn't got the power to do anything. He's putting out just the power from his ACU there, 20 power. A little bit of ground fire from the strats. And Zock, of course, recognizing that Adjuton had so much more eco early on, thought he'd lost. Says he was expecting GCs to show up. Well, he was ahead, but he wasn't ahead by quite that much. Adjuton down to the last 1600 hit points. The next volley shall do it and bring this one to a close, but phenomenally well played from Zock. That was a beautiful nuke to get his way back into this one. I've been quite interested actually to see what would have happened had Adjuton's nuke not been avoided quite so well in the middle, had it picked off all of the sub-hunters in the middle, because that was a lot of omens, and he managed to crawl back in here and start tearing things up. It might have been a slightly more even finish, but nonetheless, stunning play there from Zock. Well played from Adjuton, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. As always, more to come from me in the future. In the meantime, stay well and stay safe. This is Gyle, signing out.